Hey adapters, I'm Doug Parsons. I'm a partner at
It's
Simpatico Studios where we
1:30.
live stream conversations about complex business and social
My
challenges
little
with
guy is
professionals like yourself
definitely
who are
trying to
working
figure
on
out
the
how to
same
turn them off.
issues. Our shows are live streamed in front of a global audience of your professional peers on simpatico.tv. I'm building a new type of online community for professionals like yourself on the Climate Adaptation channel. If you're a regular listener of my America Adapts podcast, I think you'll find that we're taking our conversations about important problems, policies, and solutions to the next level here. And if you're interested in being a guest, we'd love to hear from you. And now join us for this latest episode. Hey adapters, welcome back. Today our guest is Marie Chischilly. Marie is the Executive Director at the Institute for Tribal Environmental Professionals, ITEP. She is responsible for managing ITEP's work with Northern Arizona University, state and federal agencies, tribes, and Alaskan Native Villages. In 2020, ITEP celebrated 28 years serving over 95% of all the 574 tribes in Alaskan Native Villages nationwide. Marie will give us an overview of her work with ITEP. She'll discuss climate change impacts on U.S. tribes and Alaska Native villages and explores the use of traditional knowledge in climate change initiatives. Hi, Marie. Welcome to the show.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing well. Well, thank you for coming on. I'm looking forward to this conversation. What's ITEP? Can you give us a little bit of background of this organization you work for?
Thank you. The Institute for Tribal Environmental Professionals, also known as ITEP, we're based out of Flagstaff, Arizona on Northern Arizona University campus. And for the last 28 years, as you said, we've been serving tribes throughout the entire country, from Alaska all the way down to Florida. All 574 tribes, and almost half of them are in Alaska. And what we do is we have teams that work on air quality, water quality, solid waste, land. We have a great student program for getting students excited about STEM programs, and we have a really strong climate program. So my staff of about 50, along with students, really go out into the field and train each individual tribal professional one by one and build capacity using their laws, their customs, their traditional knowledges, and lay the foundation with federal laws and state laws.
All right, how long have you been at ITEP?
I've been here about 9.5 years, so excited to get into my 10th year.
All right. So that's quite a while there. Well, okay, I didn't realize, from my own digging around, you are quite a large organization in the sense of based out of Northern Arizona. And how does that work, though? You're working with all these tribes. Typically, are you traveling a lot? Is your staff out there engaging? And of course, I know times have changed, at least for the past year, but how does that work? Are they actually based outside of Northern Arizona?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. Please elaborate.
Pre-COVID, and I have to, just give a shout out to all the first responders and all the people who we've lost and who are still dealing with it. So all my relations, I send you blessings. But as far as what we do, pre-COVID, my team traveled all the time. We go to regions where we'll say, take for example, the Northwest. We would set up a training in the Northwest at a tribal facility. We would ask tribal speakers and tribal folks from that area to come and join us for that either 2 or 3 day training, 4 days sometimes. And we would invite all the tribes from that region to work on whether it's climate change adaptation plan, air quality training, solid waste development plan, any of those things, we would work together. So we would all travel quite extensively. Since COVID, we have had the summer basically to switch all of our trainings into online trainings. And for all of us out there trying to do the same thing, I guess the whole world is trying to do the same thing. It's been quite a challenge. We're very hands-on. We're culturally appropriate. So a lot of our cultural just protocols that we had to reimagine in a virtual world. We had to be careful with those as well and be respectful as well. So my team, a very incredible team, they managed to, through the summer, engage in changing all of their courses to mostly online courses. and some webinars, but the same thing. And we also switched all of our conferences. We had two major conferences in the last month. We had a Tribal Lands and Environment Forum, which hosted 900 people. And we just got done last week with the International Climate Conference, which hosted over 2,400 people from 30 countries.
Well, I didn't realize there was 574, and you're working with most of those. And I imagine this transition to going virtual, though, probably some communities are in remote areas. Even internet access must be an issue, right? I mean, you kind of have to factor that in. Are they sort of being left out for the moment?
So thankfully, we've had 10 years, we've had 28 years of experience of working with those nations, primarily in Alaska. The villages sometimes don't have remote access. So we've been able to work through, we still send out, sometimes we send out floppy disks, and sometimes we work with them and we have longer courses. So we tape record or we not tape record, but we record everything. And so they're able to do it on their own pace. So we're very cognizant of the issues of broadband throughout Indian country. Even in my nation, right around the corner from here in Flagstaff, the Navajo Nation still deals with broadband issues, especially during COVID times. So we're very cognizant of trying to make sure that they're represented and that they're served as well.
And you also elaborate too, when you have so many different tribes, some of them, very limited resources, but others, quite, there's infrastructure, there's staff that I think they do the things that you sort of do, and you're working with a lot of these. But could you kind of give, because I think people maybe assume that it's all pretty much the same on with the different nations, but there's different capacities, right?
Extremely different. You take the tribes that are living right by, say, in Arizona. Let's just take Arizona for a change. For one example, there's 3 or 4 tribes right around the Phoenix metropolitan areas. And they have all the infrastructure, all the broadband, all those basic essentials are met. You come up north in northern Arizona, take a 2-hour drive north, and you're back on my nation, you're back on other nations, Havasupai, Hopi nations, where access to water is still at 30%. People don't have access to water, don't have running water or sewers in their homes. So, and then you don't have, that's electricity, that's roads that are paved. Those are all infrastructure issues. So you go from, the entire bandwidth of infrastructure needs. Tribes will cover it.
Well, that must make your staff, the jobs really difficult. Let's say you're dealing with waste management, and you're like, well, we're going to go work with these tribes, and just the diversity of resources that they have, makes your staff. I guess they have to be very flexible to deal with a kind of different situation on the ground.
My staff are incredible. The first thing we do is we meet with the region. Say we're in Alaska, we'll meet with a regional hub there and regional tribes. And we deal with the regions because a lot of them will, there's some that have been there, some professionals have been there 10 years, and they will come back and they will help the ones that are just coming in. So there's this culture that we build within to mentor one another. And so, and Alaska is unique because their land is frozen. So you have to barge all their solid waste out. And that's very expensive for a tribe or for a native village who's trying to just meet the basic needs. And then you add on the cost of barging all garbage out. So it's really complicated, but I really commend my staff, and I commend all the tribal professionals that we work with, the tribes. We really try to reach out. We also have what are called advisory committees. All of the mediums, air, land, water, climate, they all have advisory committees that are made up of the top experts, tribal professionals in the field, and they really advise us on what's happening, what's needed. And so we really listen to them. In any of our courses and all of our conferences, we have evaluation systems. So we have firsthand knowledge of what we're doing well and where we need to work on. So I'm really excited about all the different things that we've been able to create in the last 10 years. And even before that, it's really listening to tribes and meeting their needs.
Right. Well, okay. It's hard to generalize, but let's talk about climate change in the tribes. Could you maybe give us a brief overview, and maybe we kind of drill down, there's some examples, but what is climate change mean for tribal nations? I mean, what are the impacts? Why is this an issue?
Great, that's a great question. I'll start with the National Climate Assessment. If you know the National Climate Assessment, the NCA, it's the national report that goes to Congress. It's every 4 years. In the last two iterations of, we're now in the 5th iteration that will be coming out soon, the 5th iteration that will start. So in climate NCA 3 and 4, they had a chapter just on indigenous peoples and tribes. Now, we were the only race that had our own chapter. And it was because everyone acknowledged that climate change has a disproportionate impact on tribal nations because of our subsistence lifestyle. Meaning, like say in Alaska, 80% of their diet, their food, their water, their gathering, all comes from the tundra or the water around them. So if 80% of your diet is coming from there and you're dealing with exacerbated conditions of wildfires, droughts, and all these issues happening, you're more susceptible to it. And a lot of my people, our tribes, still have their religions tied to gathering their herbs and their medicinal medicines. So it's the land and the water and the air is integral to who we are as people. So when you add climate change and then you add all the social issues that we deal with, and then you layer on COVID, it's an incredible storm. But I think one thing I always tell people when we're working on these is the resilience of tribal people is incredible, So I don't know if I answered that correctly the way you wanted it.
No.
I'm trying to get there. Yeah.
So more broadly, like, is climate change an issue? Is it going to impact the tribes? And obviously, yes. And just following up on that, and this is, I wonder if there's lessons to be learned from, and I want you to kind of make sure that I'm not generalizing about tribes, but my sense of my own exposures, generally it's not like a hard sell, and most of the tribes think climate change is an issue, right? They think it's a threat and it's going to, right? Is that true?
Yeah, that's correct. Yes.
And well, let's stay with me here. And so, a lot of tribes are in more rural areas, but if you think of maybe more rural, I don't know if it's proper, politically correct, but it's like, sort of white rural people, they might be some of the most skeptical of climate change, even though a lot of them are living much closer to the land than people living in the cities. And yet they're the most skeptical sometimes of what climate change represents and as a threat. What I'm getting at here is seems like we could learn something. What is it about, you sort of got to it, how the relationship to the land, but what are some lessons to be learned there?
There are probably 2 lessons, I would say. There's the resilience lesson. Because tribes all through the entire country, and this is indigenous peoples in general throughout the entire globe, have been dealing with colonization. It hasn't gone away. It's just a new form, as we say. When you hear in the United States over the last 550 years, we've been dealing head on with colonization, meaning all the, taking the land, forcing us to go to schools, forcing us to change our religions, taking away languages. So those are all federal policies that were implemented at one time or another. And so I think, and I talked to an elder recently about what we are going through right now with COVID, and they basically said it's your long walk, and that means for the Navajo Nation, they were taken away from our lands here in Arizona, and we were forced to march 4,000 miles to New Mexico, and we were kept there for 4 years under very, very harsh conditions. And it was until we were forced to basically sign a treaty and give up many of our rights and land that we were able to come back. We were the lucky ones. We were able to come back to our lands. However, in those years that we were forced to do all that, and then all subsequent issues that have come up, it really builds more than anything resilience in your heart and your mind about how to deal with these things. We've been through it. We've been through the worst of the worst. So when I think about COVID and I think about climate change, I think about, just where we're going. What have we been through? We've already been through some of the worst times of our lives. Our ancestors have prayed for us for, as we call it, 7 generations forward. So when we're looking 7 generations forward, that's what I'm thinking about. When I'm a healthy 50-year-old woman and I'm excited to be, leading a great team of people and my staff, and just saying, where are we going to be in 50 years? Where are we 7 generations from now? And are we planning for that? Are we praying for that? Because I already have the foundation of my ancestors. I know we can do it. It's just what we're going to get through. Is it going to be uncomfortable? Is it going to be scary? Is it going to be heartbreaking? Yes, to all of them. And it's happened. My nation has suffered tremendously under COVID. However, I know that we will continue to move forward under this with our hearts solid, and that's my teaching. The second one is under just learning from traditional knowledges. There's a lot of talk about protecting and misuse of traditional knowledges, and that's just how we live as people. Living a lifestyle with the earth could be understood better by a lot of non-tribal folks and non-indigenous folks, because it's not that hard. It's learning to grow a couple of times a year, saving water, recycling, all the things that may be annoying to some could actually really help our environment. And really looking at how we're using energy. Can we move to a renewable energy? Is that something we're going to consider? Because if you look at the science, and just based on science alone, we're not doing well on this planet, and the repercussions are starting to come true. So there's 2 things: resilience and traditional knowledges. It's common sense, really. And really paying attention to your community. There's a really strong sense within tribes of being community-based. You're not out there alone. You're not going to be doing things just for yourself. You're doing things for your family, for your community. So you're really taking that into consideration when you're working and when you're serving. It's a really long answer.
No. It was a beautiful answer, actually. That was beautiful. I got a question from the community room from Mike and Anne Marie. What's your biggest challenge or biggest frustration in your line of work, and what can the average citizen do to help in your work? And I mean, that's sort of, there's the average citizen, and there's you're working more closely with tribal citizens, and so I guess you can answer kind of for both.
Sure. So let's take the citizen. I want to say average, the amazing citizen. I would say well, first the lands that you're on, acknowledge the lands that you're on. At one point in time, they belong to a tribe of some sort, wherever you are in the United States. So acknowledging that first. I was remiss not to acknowledge that the lands I'm on is sacred to 11 tribes within this region, including my own. So, but knowing if there are tribes around you, if you're working on regional plans, if you're working on community projects, to include them. Go out there and look around and say, hi, I'd really like you to join our initiative. We're working on this certain aspect, or whatever you're working on. Just get to know the tribe, get to know and understand that they're just like us. They care about family, they care about their children's education, they care about having healthy lives. So really just making that extra attempt to learn more about the place you're at, and the community that may be around you that may not be seen every day, but they're there. So that's for the citizen. As far as challenger for me in my work, I think, I'll go back to the National Climate Assessment. If you take that chapter by chapter and you break it down and you look at the funding that's attributed to every section, if you look at water, ocean acidification, land issues, you get bajillions of dollars. I'll just say that word. They get a lot of money. When you look at tribes and you can break it down and you look at the actual amount of money going to them, and this is because I've worked in this field so far, I can say this, there's $10 million for 574 tribes who are on the front lines of climate change. If you do the math, that's not even very much for each tribe. And they don't break it up by 574, they break it up by, they give big grants out, but it's for me, it's nowhere near where tribes need to be. And so the treaty rights that tribes were established on need to be honored, need to be addressed again. They need to, so that's my biggest challenge, is really, being at the forefront and explaining that we may be resilient, but we still need a lot of support. And we're making the best that we can with what we get. And so just really voicing those concerns with not only our federal partners, but also state partners who are working with tribes in their field.
Okay, could you maybe give us an example when you help tribes with adaptation plans? So sometimes that takes a form of an adaptation plan. You know, city governments have an adaptation plan, states. Is that the form that it might take, that the Navajo Nation has its own adaptation plan? And you know, what are the status of those plans? Are they pretty good? Do you guys come in and sort of say, well, you might want to kind of beef up this area? What's going on there?
No. Well, good. Yeah. If they ask us, you know.
Well, when I said that, I already am like, what am I doing? Of course, you're not going in there and telling them and getting your federal partners to go in there and tell them what they're doing wrong. Yeah, I get it. That's not how you do it. Go on.
Okay, so what we do at ITEP is we have a climate change program that starts from the basics. You know, we teach them what climate change is. That's our 101 course. Then we go into adaptation planning. What are the different aspects of your climate change plan, your vulnerability assessments, what is your traditional knowledges you want to maintain? It's almost like your SWOT, if you're doing a strategic plan. What are your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, all these things you're thinking about, and what do you want to see in the future? So we lay that all down with them. And again, we work in regions. So some tribes are further ahead than others, some are just starting. But you can use the same data because, in regions, you're looking at, say, water temperature, say in the Northwest, you're looking at the stream water temperature. One stream may be similar to another stream. You may be dealing with salmon issues, fish issues. So you're working together as a team to try to get these plans done. You base the plan, now this is where the tricky part is, and I've been talking about this for several years now. Once we get the plan done, it may be a beautiful plan, it may be perfect for their nation, it may have all the traditional knowledges they want to keep and protect, but then the next step is implementation. And that's where a lot of tribes find that there's discord among federal partners because there's no true track. Like, okay, we want to build, we want to build dams, or we want to improve infrastructure. We want to do these things. Then you're on your own, basically. The tribe is on their own to try to find that extra funding to help them implement their plan. So that's my next real big goal, is to try to see what we can do as a unit at ITEP and what the federal government and partners can do to really streamline those processes, especially for issues around relocation. Say a tribe is near a shore and that shoreline is being eroded by climate issues. Where do they go? What is that whole process? There's like 10 agencies that you have to work with, and then your own agency, then your own state, all these jurisdictional issues. So it can be complicated. So just really finding smoother and clearer paths for tribes to take once their implementation plan is started would be helpful.
You find there's some skills that you're actually kind of having to learn. I think of managed retreat, and sea level rise, and this is a new area. Managed retreat. There's academics and planners that are getting into this space, helping communities move. And there's I always mispronounce the French in Louisiana. There's a group. Yeah, thank you. And it's the famous one, and it's just not everyone has the answers, and I'm assuming you guys don't probably have all the answers. But is it something that ITEP it's showing up on your lap a bit more, that you have to think about managed retreat? Is it coming up? Are you doing workshops and such around it?
There was a whole track on relocation and that issue at our conference. So it was, it's a really, really touchy subject because when you're thinking of relocating a tribe, you're talking about, where do you go? Do you have ancestral lands further upstream that you could go to? What are the lands that you're leaving behind? There could be burial places there that you don't want to leave behind. So there's all these issues that you have to consider. And you have to consider the infrastructure, the cost of infrastructure. You have to build new schools, new hospitals, new homes on the new location. how does that get paid for? So it's step by step, and like the Quinault Nation up in Washington, led by President Von Chart. And I have a good friend, Dr. Gary Marshima, that's one of their tasks. They're moving to a location that's safer, and they're doing it gradually. They're doing it in steps, and they're really, really, and I love their paradigm, their model that they're using is they really incorporate the tribal community members and what they want, so that they're re-envisioning or envisioning a new place to live for them and their families to come.
I just imagine how fraught that would be. It's like hopefully enough tribes are getting exposed to some of these impacts and the changes that are coming, but just a science or a federal agency saying, look at these models for sea level rise, we're going to need you to move, and just how fraught that is with like when you're talking to a tribe and saying, what do you have to be very sensitive to the history and such, like as you were describing. So, but it's those conversations are gonna have to kind of occur as the impacts kind of get larger and larger. So,
yeah, and it occurs along with municipalities, because a lot of cities on the shorelines as well. So what happens when those issues start coming up for cities as well. So we're learning a lot from what the cities are doing as well. So partnering again with local municipalities is key.
Well, so we've reached the end of our episode here. This has been great. This was quick. Hopefully I wasn't too you were I was
on a roll here.
Right. No. You see, you can start to dig into this stuff. 24 minutes passes quickly. What I want to do is I want to take it in just chatting. We can do the wrap up. There's another question or two, and if I'm going to give a chance for the community to ask more. But just really quickly, what's next for you? And then we'll just close this out.
What's next for me? I'm really working on a new topic area, not new, but I've been working on this for a while, and it's on climate hope, and I'd like to leave that message with everyone, despite what's happening today, despite what's happening, all over what news, turn off the news. But anyway, climate hope is one thing I think about when I think about our ancestors. My son is part Lakota, and so there's a medicine man named Black Elk who was in the 1800s, and he looked 7 generations forward. And he saw this generation that I'm raising, that we're raising if you have young kids, as the hope for our world, not just the indigenous peoples, but all of this generation. If you just look how strong they are and how they're so in tune with their earth already, they're fighting for their earth, whether they can vote or not. It's amazing. And so for me, climate hope is something that is real, and that I know that if you put your heart in it and you think about it a little bit more, and you think about 7 generations, your grandkids, you will think differently about what we're doing to our earth. And I'd say that, and I leave those good words with you. And thank you for this interview.
Well, that's a great final message. But I want you to hold up. We're going to just go into just chatting before we close out your time with us. But give me a moment, and we'll be right back.
Mm-hmm.